Here in the city of Long Branch, we refer to our school community as the Long Branch Public School family. And the major driving force to our motivation are the nearly 6,000 students that enter our schools each day. Our student population is quite diverse from various backgrounds and circumstances, from different religions, different economic situations, and certainly different passions. We are fortunate to work in an award-winning school district with nationally recognized schools for sustainable practices, and also our innovative programs linked through our Future Ready Schools program. Each school in our city is certified under the New Jersey Future Ready Schools program. Within that program, we have innovative career technical education practices as well that has helped us forge local and global partnerships to give our students a true experiential learning process. The Long Branch Public Schools certainly believe we are a place where children matter most.
Good morning or afternoon or evening, whichever time you're logging on to our virtual conference. To all the participants, I have with me today the illustrious Don Covin of the Long Branch Board of Education. He is the board president of the Long Branch board. And I also have with me Dr. Michael Salvatore, the superintendent of schools for the Long Branch School District. So at this time, I would like to take the opportunity to let Mr. Covin and Dr. Salvatore take turns to introduce themselves. So Mr. Covin, I'll start with you.
Yes. So I'm Don Covin. I been a member of the board now for 7 years, I believe. I am currently running a second term as the board president. But prior to that, I spent 32 years in education, worked my way up the ladder, coached in the district, also went to school at Long Branch. So I know Long Branch like the back of my hand, and that's why I wanted to continue giving back to the community. Since I retired as a principal, I felt it was natural for me to continue to give back to the children, and thus I ran for the Board of Education, was elected, and now I'm here serving.
Thank you, Mr. Covin, and we're so grateful that you are serving as not just a board member, but also the board president for this board.
Thank you.
I could give you 100 more things about Don Covin. He's very humble, so his reputation in this community is outstanding, dating back in this. I actually won't reveal his graduation date.
Thank you.
But he was not only a heck of an athlete, but a really trusted principal in our schools for many years at the high school and the middle school. So I can go on and on about him, but I'll share a little bit about myself. Mike Salvatore, superintendent of schools here. Arrived here as a substitute teacher in 1997, $50 a day. It was a great experience, and I'm still here 20-something years later, and have had numerous positions from teacher in the classroom, which I love that experience, to primary school principal, which is probably the greatest job you can ever have, where everybody appreciates you because they're all under 4 feet tall, and that's a great place to be. And then I've worked at central office for quite some time, since 2004, been superintendent. This is my 10th year as superintendent, and I'm just excited to be here with you today to kind of share our story a little bit in Long Branch.
Thank you so much. And I know how busy both of you have been under the circumstances and being in this pandemic and all the nuanced as well as novel issues that we're dealing with. So I definitely appreciate you, both of you, taking time out of your busy schedules to do this interview with us. Part of the reason we wanted to highlight Long Branch is because having been involved with the district as a board attorney, I've been able to see the wonderful things that are happening in this district. Every time there is a board meeting, well, at least pre-pandemic, there was always a performance, there were always awards, and the level of talent, the level of hard work, the level of dedication that not only exists just within the school, but also from your leadership is truly reflected in the work that both of you've been doing for this district. So it's very nice to be, able to have this conversation with you and engage in a dialogue about not just Long Branch, but also the two of you, because the two of you are phenomenal leaders in this space. So it's definitely appreciated that you're here today. So one of the things, since both of you have such a long history with Long Branch, and now that we are in the middle of this pandemic, how do you see your roles having had changed, if at all? And how do you see what you've done so far in Long Branch change as a result? I'll let whoever wants to go first, go first.
I will go first, and I preference that to go first because our role as a board member is to provide the necessary fundings and tools for Dr. Salvatore and the staff to execute the plan that he sees fit for us. Now, all of us as board members understand our role, but it's the superintendent who drives the bus. And we understand that. We trust in his leadership. We do question sometimes things that we don't understand. However, we believe we have the best superintendent in the state. And I'm not saying that just because he's here, but the fact of the matter is his accolades, which he hasn't talked about, pans that out. So I believe our role as a board member is easy because we have to provide the funding and make sure that he has the funding or our district has the funding so that he can execute the plan.
Can I just ask the follow-up sort of question, or I'll make a follow-up comment. So you say your role is easy, right? But in reality, at the end of the day, whatever decisions are being made, you're approving them. And even something as simple as funding and with state cuts and budget cuts and with constraints, what do you think has been most challenging about being able to navigate this current pandemic that we are in as a board member?
When you talk about funding, we have a business administrator or superintendent of schools. They're on top of, because of their connections with the state, they're on top of where the funding will come from, how much funding we will get. And then it's for us to sit down with the business administrator and the finance office and decide where the money should flow to. And that's why I say it's easy when it comes to negotiating that part of the finances, because the finance office and Dr. Salvatore's office has already, did the groundwork. We're just getting the funds and then saying, this is what we need to do. Doc is saying this is what we need to do, and we team up and get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Covin. Dr. Salvatore?
Sure. I think, and what Don is talking about is really just a matter of trust in terms of a relationship. And that's why it works. When you have a board and a superintendent and an administrative team that trust each other, it feels easier, even in a really tough and trying time. I mean, right now, this is the craziest thing we've ever seen, ever navigated. I mean, as my 10th year, I feel like a rookie all over again, because everything we're doing is brand new. There's no file to go to, no previous emails. Everything is from scratch. And that's what makes it so challenging. I mean, in terms of the board, every board member knows they have connections in their community. And what do people want to know? When is my child coming back to school? Will they get a device? Can we get Wi-Fi? I mean, the questions don't stop. But the board has really done a great job in making sure they're funneled in properly so that the board meetings are not polluted with questions about what their neighbor needs or has. And Afshan, you've been part of these board meetings pre-pandemic and during pandemic, and you've watched. I mean, we've had these really complex, intense plans where the board asks plenty of questions. Sometimes I feel like there are too many. Just kidding. There never can be too many. But their questions help drive what the community feels, the pulse of what each person who lives in our city feels. So I think it's been a great partnership so far. And it's not easy work, but when you trust each other, it certainly is a lot easier.
So what do you think not just on a school district level, of course, on the legal end too, we are having to make decisions based on what we think is the most reasonable interpretation or accurate interpretation of the law under the circumstances. So, we've worked with, your district as well on a lot of these issues. But what do you think, on that note, has been the biggest strength or the best strategy that you've had in terms of not just communicating with the board members, but also with the community and with the teachers and faculty, whether it be dissemination of information or expectations, or what are some of the strategies that you've used that you found helpful?
Some of it is just pausing because the information comes so quick and changes so quick. There were so many times where I was in the middle of typing a full letter to the community, and I just said, I need a little more information. Let me get it. And all the information changed within 24 hours. And that's the environment we're in today, whether we get a memo from the Department of Health and we start like drafting a letter and all of a sudden those parameters change. So what it requires is a totally different way to communicate. We've have a board, as a board, we've actually been meeting on a regular schedule. We've been in a face-to-face setting, which you've been part of, and practicing social distancing and wearing masks and temperature reading. But at the same time, we follow those meetings with public announcements that go out and travel far. I mean, we're watching some of our broadcasts go out and hitting countries in South America because of relatives. And I think the expectation now is that we need information every week. We can't wait every month. We need information and correspondence almost daily. But at times it's hard because that information changes so quickly.
And when the information does change, what is the most challenging part of that information and change, or getting the information back out, would you say?
Well, for us, we have a community, a really diverse community, which we love and embrace. But at the same time, communicating with a diverse community can be really a tremendous challenge. For many of our correspondents go out in 3 languages, in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. So if you're trying to be timely with information, I'll give you an example. Contact tracing or quarantining. You have to get that information out almost immediately so that you can have a plan in place to work remotely, potentially the next day. We've got to translate every one of those letters and get them out in a timely manner so that families are prepared to adjust their entire life in a very short period of time. So the communication in a very diverse community becomes really difficult. And sometimes you have to be really timely in presenting it.
Makes sense. So, Mr. Covin, since speaking of communication, since you are you have a very interesting role because you are responsible for responding to your constituents, right? Which is this huge township of very, as Dr. Salvatore said, very diverse and unique community, a very special community, in my opinion. And so, how has this pandemic impacted you in terms of communicating with the community, communicating with your board members, communicating with the district leadership, and what have been some, challenges for you, and not just challenges, or what are some of the strategies as well that you've utilized that have helped?
As in the past, being a principal and a coach and being in the district, my strategies are basically the same. I'm out in the community. I'm there every day. Of course, I live in Long Branch, born and raised here. My roots are strong here. And so it allows me to walk the streets and be out and get information from the parents and also from the students. But the main thing is bringing that information back to the right people, and that's the administration, and then executing a plan for their concerns, because every concern is important. Because if it meant that much for them to stop me and to voice their concerns, then I have to give that concern to Dr. Salvatore, who will get it to the proper people. But one of the things that we talk about in Long Branch is dealing with the whole child. That's our main thing, that socio-emotional learning piece. You can't educate a child when there's other things going on. And Long Branch has been out in the forefront when it comes to that. And so, I would ask Dr. Salvatore to elaborate a little bit more on that, but I'm so proud that we are not saying, here's a piece of technology, go, use it. Or, people talk about virtual learning and so on and so forth. No, we have professional development for our staff, our administrators. And then we have situations where we deal with the parents who are struggling with that aspect of it. So it's a long litany of things that we do. And Doc, if you can expand on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I actually just think about it in terms of communicating with one another. In the midst of a pandemic, what do we have? We have tremendous civil unrest, right? And so now you're trying to communicate important health information, but you need a pulse on the community. And Don has been that for so many years before he was even on the board for me. He'd come back and say, Mike, let's have a conversation about, what my block is talking about, what my community is talking about. Let's have a conversation about how people are feeling. And he's been able to bring people to me. Now, I've been here long enough that I have the relationships and might not need Don to do that, but he brings some credibility to the table when he can bring over the pastor of the Second Baptist Church so that we have a conversation on how to address the community about unrest, about how to create a rally around unity and connecting each other. And it was really one of the catalysts behind our equity council that we have in district, a conversation with him, our vice president, about, what are we putting out to our community to let them know that we care about them, during this time. And we care about their circumstancing to know that whether your complexion is pale or brown or black, that we support you. And we want to make sure that you feel valued in this process. So Don's been not just talking about the whole child for one particular group of kids. He's been a voice for everybody. And when one particular branch of our community needs some support, regardless of their background or circumstance, Don has always been there to bring that to my attention. And I appreciate that because I don't live in this community. I live 12 minutes away. And sometimes it feels like a different planet. But the hours I spend here, and Don knows, I certainly am part of this family. But I think it goes two ways, that as soon as you have a wall up and you can't communicate, that's when problems occur. And I think it's the reason why we're able to solve a lot of the problems that we have.
So one thing you brought up, Dr. Salvatore, which is something that I'm certainly really proud of with Long Branch. And I know this is an initiative that started even before the pandemic, and you kind of touched on it, the educational equity piece. And it not only relates to how it impacts students, but also the staff and the community as a whole. And I know there's a lot of work that went into it, and it's truly unique what Long Branch is doing. So would you mind sort of sharing some of that with us?
Sure. Actually, it's an exciting thing for the board and for the entire community too. It was the inception of our School of Social Justice. A little uneasy people felt at the time when we came to the board about it. We were resurrecting our oldest school in district, the 1927 facility. Was kind of the heartbeat of the city. And we restored it with community dollars. And we were saying, well, we had to alleviate pressure from our high school because of growth of enrollment. And this was an opportunity to take that building, to restore it to its glory and create something really unique. And the idea was to come up with a School of Social Justice. And the board was, I think, so supportive of this concept, this idea before George Floyd, right? Before, Breonna Taylor, before all this. Our board was like, wow, this is an opportunity for our children to be engaged in work that really matters, that they can evaluate our community in terms of systemic problems and structures, and then have a voice in correcting that. And the theme for us was to find your voice as a child, whether it be an environmental science class that's evaluating what's occurring in the drinking water, not just in Flint, Michigan, but in Newark and in Long Branch, or whether it be statistics classes that are vetting the reliability and validity of statistics that are put out in media today. I mean, they're really pushing the bar, and I think our board is so excited about how that we opened the doors there, how children brought that building to life, and we're really articulating social justice in a way that's never been done in schools. And it's one of the projects I'm probably most proud of in all my time in the district, because it addresses that equity issue that we have in society, the issue that some people don't even feel any disruption from. And it brings to the forefront that we should all have some compassion. We should all be empathetic, and we should all be working toward a solution. So that was the kind of the start of it, but it's morphed into something new where we're using that group of students to start evaluating our policies to see if they're equitable. I mean, imagine having a group of kids actually vet our policies to say, well, that policy doesn't really meet the needs of everybody, to help us with curriculum writing, which isn't happening anywhere, where kids are actually evaluating the curriculum to say, are we missing key components of history in our humanities curriculum, or did we capture everything? So, and the board is fully behind this. When we talk about bringing children in to add their lens, the board loves it. I think everybody loves it because we realize how important it is and how necessary it is to hear what they're saying and their perspectives are.
And that goes to the piece of developing the whole child and getting them involved, because the social and emotional part of their life, if they don't feel they have a stake in it, then we're just giving them a book, or we're giving them a piece of paper and saying, these are the facts. But in this situation, we're telling them to find the facts, look it up, and then bring it to us, and then we'll work together. So I think it's a fantastic piece, because they are owning this, and they're discovering their piece in life as far as making sure that the facts are what they are. Because so long kids feel now that, hey, they might have been lied to, or they might not have been told the whole truth. And now we're letting them be a part of finding it. And I think it's fantastic, Doc, what we're doing.
But it goes back to that social, emotional, whole child piece. It goes back to teaching children the value in other people. It's just a mutual respect. You would think it was just common courtesy, that everybody learns that people have equal value regardless of their background or circumstance. But we're learning today that not everybody feels that way. And whether it be a tone that somebody has, the way they say something, the words they actually use, whether it be a speech that's delivered right to the public, on how that's translated and perceived, it's really important. And to focus on children at 3 years of age, walking through, learning to respect differences in one another, learning to have norms around conversations. I mean, this is the reason why you have problems today. I almost wish that some of our government were enrolled in our SEL lessons for the 3-year-olds, because it actually would work so much better. And if you've watched any of the debates, you would know what I'm talking about.
And so, and that's what I have seen, at least because this is already an initiative that Long Branch had for a while. I've kind of seen how it translates into the way you've handled the pandemic, the way you're dealing with the pros and cons and the challenges that come with virtual learning and hybrid. So I would like to ask both of you, what have you seen translate over to virtual learning and how it's impacted students as well as staff?
Well, I know Doc can answer I can do it from the community piece and the outside of it. Everybody was afraid. This is something new. And so we had to take that social and emotional learning piece and give it to our teachers. See, sometimes we forget that the students are the only ones that need that piece, but we have had staff members that were afraid, or their technology knowledge is not where they think they should be. And so we had to bring everybody in, and not only just the students, but the staff also. And so we did a ton of professional development. I mean, it's continued to go on because there's new things coming out every day. And I'm going to pass the ball to Doc now on that note.
Yeah, I think it's just been a really trying time for everybody. Don, you started talking about the fear in terms of what exists in this environment, and I've been trying to lead through a very empathetic lens, and it's difficult because everybody's situation is different. So whether we provided accommodations for staff, um, and certainly tried to meet all the students' needs. This virtual learning component, as it's looked at from the community or from children's eyes, it's a challenging thing. We are so much better now than we were in the spring. So that development piece that Don, you talked about, yeah, that's helped out. But when it comes to virtual learning, what we are seeing is something that is a little scary. You see, when I was a preschool teacher, there was a protocol in district. We visited every child's home. We actually went to every home. We had a cup of tea in some homes, and other homes, we weren't allowed to sit down. But we went to every kid's home, and we came back as a teacher. We had a new respect for what children were working with in terms of how their family dynamics were. And I always wished, as a superintendent, I can give every teacher that opportunity to walk in the home of a child that they have, so that they can understand exactly what children are experiencing outside of school. Not so that they can reduce the standard, but so they can understand that additional supports need to be put in place. This virtual learning environment has brought all of our teachers into the homes of every child. And it's really unique because they're starting to see some things they didn't understand. They're starting to see children with laptops district issued, with MiFi that district issued, in bathrooms, because that's the only place in their house they can focus quietly, in closets, sitting in hallways of apartment buildings, sitting in their parents' car because that's the only quiet place they can be. And our staff, the empathy lens that's being developed by our staff it far exceeds whatever I envisioned it to be. Because I wish this teacher who doesn't really understand the walk of life of all of our children can be in their eyes and in their home for a second. We're seeing that. And the struggle now that teachers have is, wow, we really need to get our kids back into the classroom. They really need to get back, because I'm witnessing the learning environment at home, and I know how challenging it is. So even though I think it's a better experience than it was in the spring, there's no substitute for that face-to-face instruction. And I think the board has been outstanding. When Don, you mentioned finances before, Afshan, he's talking about giving more than 1,600 families internet access. 1,600 families internet access. We're paying a monthly fee for that. Distributing thousands upon thousands of devices into homes, purchasing more than 1,000 devices just for early childhood spaces. I mean, the funds to make that happen, and making sure that we had those devices ready for kids even before the aid was received, was like a miracle. And to go to a board and say, these are some of the needs we have, and everybody say, well, whatever it takes, that's the right attitude to have.
So I will say that one of the things I have noticed is with this virtual learning space, it's not just, about making sure the kids have the resources and the teachers have the resources. That's a challenge in and of itself, but it's also keeping everybody motivated. So how have, I guess, both of you, right, from your different perspectives and your different roles within the district, how have you kept people motivated? And what, and the second piece of this is, what kind of steps are you now taking to try to get people back into the classrooms, right? I imagine now that teachers are seeing some of the home environment, some of the challenges, and also hopefully getting over that initial fear of the unknown. Has there been a change or a shift in wanting to support the hybrid model and potentially being back in school when we can? So between that and just keeping people motivated, what are some of the initiatives, or what have you seen that's worked for you?
Well, and that's probably more of a question for Dr. Salvatore, but I would say, from being a teacher, no program, no speech, no rah-rah is going to get you motivated. Teachers are special. And when they come to us, they come with the background of caring, loving, and wanting the best for a student. So we don't go with a rah-rah speech or something and say we got to motivate them, because that's not what it's about. Motivation is when you take that data and you move a student from point A to point B. That's the motivation for most teachers. And so if we provide them with the data and say, hey, you're moving your students from A to B, from B to C, and you continue to see the progress in the process, then you will see a motivated teacher. But there is no magic bullet when it comes to teachers being motivated. So passing you the ball, Doc.
Yeah, so the student motivation piece, what we've seen is in our digital experience that we've just used brain science to not bore kids to death on a laptop. I mean, can you imagine sitting on a screen for 4 to 6 hours a day? Some people do it as adults and they are tired. So we've managed to limit screen time for our youngest learners and break that up so that we're hitting them in small doses instead of having a full straight hour. The high school has done the same thing. It's increased the amount of time. And we've looked at those developmental trajectories in terms of what's an appropriate amount of screen time for each child. After elementary, they don't really identify what is appropriate, but we know if you've got more than an hour where you're actually listening to somebody through a screen, it's just too much. So we have a nice blend now of direct instruction, of asynchronous learning that can keep students engaged. But I'll tell you, one of the most motivating factors for many of our kids are the extracurricular activities that we've preserved. I mean, at first, everybody was afraid to say that the marching band could be on the front lawn of the high school. But in doing it, it is truly a mental health exercise for our kids. I mean, I'm watching 60 to 70, maybe 80 kids spread out, socially distant on the front lawn of our high school, and just so happy to be part of something normal. I'm watching our athletic teams come in for workouts in the first week of July and willingly getting their temperature checked, staying distant, but working out. It truly is a motivator. And it is, I believe, a really important mental health exercise for our kids, for our staff, and even for our community with just limited audiences for competition. There is a boost. There's a certain energy that comes out and motivates our community, our kids. There's always that spirit that we call it the Green Wave Pride, but there's always that spirit around athletics and extracurricular activities, but they're truly motivating factors.
Yeah, I do. I have witnessed the band on board meeting days, and I'm amazed by the fact that the kids have somehow managed to, throughout this entire process, kind of still retain that interest and take on these challenges that we are faced with right now. I kind of want to pivot to a more personal, individual segment for both of you. And what I kind of want to know is, and I want both of you to be able to, or to answer this to the extent you want to, is on a professional base level as well as on a personal level, how has all this shift and all that's going on in terms of this pandemic impacted you? And whoever wants to start.
Okay, so it's been tough. I mean, to know people that have gotten sick, to know people that have died from it. I mean, classmates that have passed away from this pandemic. It's real. However, we all have a job to do, and we're tasked to educate our students. And so you have to look beyond your fears, and you cannot put your fears on someone else. When I was a principal, if there was something dramatic happening in my building, how I react is going to affect all the people that's watching me. So I have to make sure that I react in a calm manner. And I think that's what we're doing is it's a changing every day by the minute. We get some statistics that say, hey, you guys can have 25%, then 50%, then it drops back down to 25. And so we are constantly evaluating, but it is tough. And this is probably the toughest times in my 38 years of education and being around and on the board that I've ever experienced. However, we're tasked to get the job done. And so whether that's technology, whether that's nurturing the students, whether that's professional development for the staff, we have to find a way to educate our children. And that's the task at hand. You have to push back on your fears and go forward with the task at hand. And that's what we were trained to do all these years in administration. And now we're just trying to take it over into the Board of Education and also with the superintendent. It's your ball, Doc.
This is, wow. I think personally, Don, you hit right on the head in terms of, I mean, we actually, very early on, we had a secretary pass from COVID, which was a shock that was felt throughout our entire school district because we were all very fearful in some respect, but when it's somebody personal that you know and you care about passes, it was certainly a challenge to us. And the good thing is having a team. I have the board is a great complement to the work we're doing here, but without my team, I'm just a person. Like my team has been amazing. Al Freeman, Janet Dudek, Pete Genovese, Celisa Aquino, Roberta Freeman. They've been extraordinary. They've worked tirelessly. But when you think about things that are exhausting, there's certain pillars in the community that hold you up as a superintendent. There's the students, they provide you the energy and the motivation to make sure things are right. And then you have your staff who you really care about because you know how much they care about the kids. And then you have this thing happen where you feel like at sometimes they're even pulling you apart though. So at some respect, they're holding you up to make sure the work is done. But right now, for me, there's at times where I feel like it's a little tug of war contest because trying to be a very empathetic leader, but who deserves more empathy? So does it the staff member who has a child care issue that you're trying to make sure you can support them, but at the same time, there's families that say, I need my child to be in school. And how do you divide that equally? It's a balance that's been very difficult. And I've had to routinely check myself and practice those social emotional learning skills those mindful practices that we encourage our kids to use. But this is a challenge. It continues to be a challenging time from the minute we wake up in the morning to the time, we rest our head on the pillow. It's something I'm constantly thinking about. When you talk about loss of sleep, my wife will tell you, so it'd be like, it's not even close to the time you're supposed to be waking up as a human. Like, go back to bed. And I'm like, I just got to write this stuff down so I can get to it tomorrow. And it's not just me because of the way I care, the affection I have for the community. My colleagues throughout the country are feeling the same way. And I've talked to people from Vancouver, from Manhattan Beach, California, to the Midwest, to Mississippi, to here. They all are feeling the same way. And that's the only kind of comfort you have in this, is that you're like, all right, at least everybody else is going through it. But it is a really challenging time, and you've got to be really mentally strong to be able to get through each phase that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, and I think one of the things that Mr. Covin said is something that I always think about. It's like situations will occur, incidents will happen, and how you react is the one thing you can control. And the way the Long Branch has reacted in being proactive in every single step that Long Branch has taken, it's just, amazing in the work that, the both of you and your teams and the board members have done just to make sure that the students' needs are met, the teachers' needs are met, and the community has what they need to get through this together. So on that note, what are some of your hopes for this year? Again, on a personal level as well as on a professional level.
So the hopes for this year is to get our students back in school. That is, and that's a personal level and also, professional level. That is the number one thing is we want our children back in school. We want them back in school safely. We want them to be productive. But what we want to do also is learn from this past experience. And what technology has allowed us to do is that when there's a situation, a weather snowstorm or something that we cannot reach, or we can use that technology to still reach our students, where in the past, okay, no school today, everybody's a snow day and they go outside and have fun. Now with this technology and the way we're using things, we could still reach our children. We could still reach our staff. So, for me, even though through this storm, there is some positive things that have come out.
Such a good point, Don. Don's big on the snow day. I'm with you. Not that we never take snow days anyway here. The kids come in all the time, but he's right in terms of embracing. What do we hope? Yes, we want kids to come back safely. We do have a projected timeline that we put out to our community. We're constantly modifying it because you have things happen. You have, somebody who works in a transportation office, who has symptoms, and the Board of Health says, hey, shut it down for 2 weeks. Like that's going to impact the timeline. But we do have a timeline to get our kids back. We are doing it slowly. So we started with our youngest learners, our highest need, preschool children with disabilities. We're working through each school. We're getting kids back. We hope that with getting one grade level back at time, we in the next 45 days, we're going to have kids, almost every kid back into school, which is a really good feeling. And that's all determined upon the community health data too. But so I'm excited about that. But the innovation piece, Don, that you started with, there are so many ways that we've learned to connect with our children and families now. I would say if you just took a snapshot at the first, I think we're 30 days into school or something, we've had teachers connect more with our parents in the first 30 days of school than they have in an entire year of communication. And why? It's because parents are sitting next to their kids while they're learning now. So the funny thing is we have parents, not how great it is, but they're raise their hand in class like they're the kid and say, can you repeat that? We're trying to write this down. So I think the parent communication has never been better. And if we can preserve that in some respects, it would be great. I've seen antiquated traditions like back to school night be completely transformed. And I say, well, why? We should always do it this way. Why would we have everybody come out on a night just to walk into classes for 6 minutes at a high school when they can actually connect and get a real experience? And then teletherapy, teleservices for mental health and behavioral health, that stuff can be remote and has proven in a remote setting to be really beneficial to our struggling community. And then the last piece is the equity component. We started something this year. We started a night school for parents and kids, and we operated 5 days a week so that if a parent has to put their child with a sitter during the day, they can actually get to see a licensed certified teacher reteach that concept or skill again. And which is just awesome. So they come home at night after work, and if they ask their child, what did you learn today? Most kids say nothing, or they say, one thing that wasn't really important. They can actually sit down with the child and watch and engage with a live teacher. And we did this for grades preschool all the way through 5th grade. So little innovations and sparks of innovation along the way, I think we need to capture and hold on to even when we get back into a normal state.
So that's one of the things that I was curious about is whether, you've mentioned innovation, engagement, and then certain types of methods and strategies that you guys have implemented to make this work. So I was curious about what you thought worked really well that you would want to maintain even when things go back to normal again, whenever that is. So you kind of answered that, but I don't know if there was anything else, Mr. Covin, that you thought should be preserved for for when things are normal again.
Well, the only other thing I would say, as far as the board is concerned, is that there's times where uh, a board member or two cannot get out. And so now with this technology, we can Zoom a meeting. If people are, if I'm at a conference in San Francisco somewhere and I can't be I can actually Zoom in and get it. So that technology piece, I think the board is really going to look at that, putting that in our toolbox, so to say, to utilize that going forward.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. And now I don't even know if you can ever cancel a board meeting for inclement weather. If you can't do it for, snow day, no snow days. I mean, it's interesting that you are one of the very few boards that decided to start meeting in person, and I want to say as early as July. I think that was one of my first meeting with you guys. And so what was the impetus behind that? And how have you ensured that the meetings that you're holding in person are meet all the standards that are required by the state and the CDC, but also make sure that it's available to the public and in a manner that allows the public to view and the board conducting its business?
Doc.
Sure. So we just actually we ripped the page out of the CDC manual and said, all right, and Afshan and Don, you both experienced this, where you walk up, you get screened by a security officer in terms of your medical health. Then you were using, this is like a real good test with only 15 people. You had your medical screening, you had your temperature check right at the door. You walked upstairs, you had your mask on. We provided shields as well. We had fresh air ventilated into the room. And then we had a public area, which was an auditorium in a separate location. We zoomed that in, and we had designated seats so that everybody could be spread out. Not that we had any big crowds during COVID. But the idea, I think people, especially our board, is that there's something that's missed in a Zoom meeting. And we all know it. It's whether it be the energy in the room, whether it be the look on someone's eyes, because you can't see if anybody's smiling anymore, right? Because they were all wearing masks. But I think our board wanted to be connected to that energy, but also wanted to be connected to the decisions that are being made. So we felt it was a priority to get back in face to face, to lead by example, if that was the path we were going to use to get children in and to get our staff back in. And then still give community access. The one thing that not everybody knows is we have a QR code that we throw on the front door for those who don't feel comfortable necessarily coming in. So if you came in and we were at over capacity, which we never have been, you could simply take your phone, scan the QR code. It gives you the board agenda. You could sit in your car, you can access it. You can read right through the agenda. So just little practices that meant a lot. And I thought that it was a good practice for everybody. And to this date, everybody seems healthy and appreciative that we were able to do that.
Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Covin?
No, Doc said it all. I mean, we experienced it when we go to all the board meetings, and we try to adhere to all the CDC recommendations, and we're a stickler about that, social distancing, and that's why we feel comfortable with holding in-person meetings.
And we also have some board members that are into their 8th decade on this planet, and they prefer to have some type of face-to-face contact. The Zoom technology is certainly not for everybody, and that's not age specific. It just, in our case, it happened to be.
Yeah, one of the things that I definitely, full disclosure, that I have mentioned to other boards is to call up Long Branch and see what they're doing, because they seem to be doing this right in terms of not just meetings, but I mean, everything's just been so well done at Long Branch. So I know some other boards have started to uh, consider doing in-person meetings, and I know I have other boards where they've also started in-person meetings, and it's always useful to have a good example of how it works and how it's done. So I'm going to pivot back. I know we went back to the district, but I'm going to pivot back to you again. So for on a more personal level, again, what are some of the things that you I guess as a result of this pandemic, and that you think that you might change moving forward, on how you operate on a day to day?
Day to day, I don't think anything's going to change in terms of our communication with the superintendent of schools. We've always had that line of communication. So I don't think anything would change as far as the board is concerned. You know, communication, communication, communication. That is the key. If somebody brings you something, you have a responsibility to bring that issue, concern to the superintendent of schools. It's not our role to address it. We are to get that information, gather it, and pass it on to the superintendent. That's why I always say it's your ball now, because when we get that information, it's our responsibility. And that's what we are. We're policymakers. Dr. Salvatore is to fulfill the policy. He is to execute it. But we're the policymakers, and we have to make sure that we remember that.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I would really appreciate, we talk about day-to-day activity, a day that I don't have to talk to the health official in the city of Long Branch. So the health official here, a great team. We work with Sid Johnson and Teresa Giordano, a great team. But my communication with them over the 10 years as superintendent, I could count on one hand. And in the past 6 months, it is like we are family. So every day, this is the environment we're in. The day-to-day has changed so much. There's people you're communicating with, there's strategies you're putting in place and how you're communicating. And even as a city, the day-to-day has changed. The mayor's involvement with making sure he's connecting the school district to the medical center in our city, to other government agencies, to other resources like the library. I mean, the day-to-day operations have changed a lot. I do look forward down the road to going back to some of those normal operations where I don't have to talk to the health department anymore. That's like something to look forward to. I'll send them a fruit basket or something, but we don't need to be on the phone every day. And then the day-to-day to not have to be evaluating personnel data. I mean, personnel data was stuff that came in and trickled in, you dealt with as a time. I mean, the personnel data we're talking about is in the hundreds each day in fluctuation, and that is an enormous task. So that's changed significantly. You don't typically have that conversation, even for the communication with your office. I mean, in terms of leaves and understanding what all these leaves mean and who's eligible for them. And then, what happens when someone quarantines? Is it their sick days? Do they get docked? I mean, your office has been really, your agency has been tremendous in all this and getting us feedback in a very timely manner, because right now we know everybody wants everything in a second. They don't want to wait 5 minutes for it.
Well, we certainly appreciate you being patient with us through all of this, because again, we are in similar situation where we're trying our best to ensure that we're advising our clients in a way that's legal and ethical, and also ensures the safety and rights of students, teachers, and all that are involved. So we definitely appreciate that. And on a more personal note, I'll ask you this question, because I mean, you're doing a lot. There's a lot that's going on. So what keeps you inspired? What keeps you motivated and inspired?
for me, it's the students. It's the community. Uh, Born and raised, as I said, in Long Branch, I've seen the transformation. I've seen the excitement. I've seen the highs. I've seen the lows. And the motivation is to continue to see our community grow, continue to see the progress that's being made in the educational field. And so, one of the things is that some people don't know, I am also on the Housing Authority Board. And one of the things that being on the Housing Authority Board is that links me with education, because I always tell people this: if a child doesn't have a place to lay his head, how am I going to ask him to do he or she to do their homework? So we link them together. We have communications. If there's a situation that I can, roll over from education to housing or from housing to education, we work closely together. So that piece right there is something that I want to continue to do and continue to help our families, our staff, and our children on that avenue.
Mm. You see, Don and I are one of our kids. We grew up in not in just this community. I grew up in an urban community. I see myself in our children. And we know how important education has been to our lives. It's changed it. It's been given us the opportunity to have an influence on what our children are experiencing each day. And also just to give them some hope that, kids from tough circumstances can be okay. We can go to college, we can get a degree, we can earn a good wage, and we shouldn't be ashamed about it. So what inspires me is the fact that I'm in a position that I'm able to potentially provide some hope to some kids that it's going to be all right, regardless of what you're going through right now. To stay focused on the books, stay focused on your sports, focus on things that are positive, and there's hope for you. And I kind of keep that in mind every day when we're approaching a scenario, whether it be a new program, a new opportunity for kids. That certainly lights a candle for me. So I would say it's all about the kids.
Well, and then these kids are lucky to have both of you as not just leaders in the district and in the community, but also as role models, certainly. So on that note, I did want to ask if there was anything else that you wanted to add in this discussion and as part of this conversation about Long Branch and about both of you. Feel free to add it now.
I thank you for this opportunity to once again put Long Branch out front, and that's our motto is where kids or children matter most, and this is all we're doing this for, is for the child, for the children, and for the staff and their family. So we truly believe in that model, and so I thank you for the opportunity to bring Long Branch Public Schools out front.
Mm. And I just want to stress that Don said it before, communication. If you're looking to improve your relationship with your superintendent or your board, it is about communicating. So whether it be timely or whether it be more detailed, if you can bridge that gap so that you learn to see each other from where they are, where they stand, which is what empathy is, then your relationship will evolve and get better and better. So it doesn't have to be that you get hired, you have a quick honeymoon period, and then everything falls apart, right? The typical tradition of the urban superintendent who's 18 months in the seat is that they have a honeymoon period, things start getting sour, and they move on. It can be something that develops over time and even gets better. It doesn't have to fade apart. So thank you, Afshan. This was great. You were a great moderator today. I appreciate it.
Thank you both so much. I definitely appreciate the time you've taken today to come and sort of speak about Long Branch, speak about yourselves and your experience. And I don't know, Dr. Salvatore, if you usually say this or if I made this up, maybe I copied this of you, but great things are happening in Long Branch. Do you say that? Is that
all the time? They are.
But I always say that in my office, great things are happening in Long Branch. My favorite, what I really miss about the pre-pandemic are the board meetings with the students' performances, the highlighting the teacher, accomplishments, the student achievements, and if there's any way we could start to incorporate that again, it would be great. But great things are happening in Long Branch, and we are always happy to work with you. And we felt it was really important to highlight an amazing district such as this.
Thank you.
Thank you.